Welcome to this fourth tale of Swords and Souls. Even though they call it 3, that's a bit of a lie because Soul Calibur actually started as Soul Blade / Soul Edge for the arcade and PS1. But since then, the game has evolved quite a bit over the Dreamcast, PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and now exclusively on the PlayStation 2 this year. So exclusivity is probably going to piss a lot of people off because, Soul Calibur 2 is a great game, and for those content-starved Nintendo fans and even the kids on the Xbox, they're not getting it this year. And when you're not getting something, chances are you're going to be mad about it. But what exclusivity does do for us is give PS2 owners a very refined, polished title right off the bat. From what you're looking at, you can see gorgeous, gorgeous visuals. All the backgrounds, especially in Soul Calibur 3, look pretty much better than any other fighting game to date. And even though they may not have the polygon counts of something like DOA 4 or the texture sizes of those, they still look better because the guys at Namco, they can use color and then they can use their own art to make some really extravagant fighting arenas. You're not in some lame-ass street with watermelons on the side, you're perched above lava, or you're flowing down a serene river, or you're in the middle of a besieged castle. It's really wonderful, especially when the comets at the end boss stage start flying down and it has this cool heat magnifying effect. So it looks good even though it's PS2 only. Benefit of having to develop on one console instead of 3. But in terms of console-specific benefits, that's pretty much where the buck stops. Even though PS2 has proven itself as online worthy, Soul Calibur 3 does not venture into that territory at all, which leaves us focusing on the new single-player additions and the slightly refined combat system over Soul Calibur 2. The other new additions are the Chronicles of the Sword single-player mode, which is a combination of strategy and fighting, or they like to call it strategy even though it's more just pointing your kids around the screen. And there's Tales of the Souls, which is a more refined single-player story adventure. It's kind of like a choose-your-own adventure. Tales of the Souls, or Tales of the Soul, or Tale of Souls, or whatever the hell it's called, it didn't get as much production value as Chronicles of the Sword or some of the other facets of the game like character creation. This is unfortunate because the choose-your-own adventure style gameplay mechanics that it occasionally presents players with are exactly what Soul Calibur needs to expand its fighting into other realms. You don't want to be burdened down with some cumbersome strategy component when you can just make a moral decision of defend guy, kill guy, or a more obvious decision like go left, go right, That would help segue the player into these cool and exciting fighting scenarios and develop characters. Instead, the game just streams text in front of you and it's sort of a nonsensical plot line and you kind of move from one place to another fighting. You still fight, and since we've established that base game is good, it's not really that awful to do, but it could have been so much better, especially since they've been doing this same sort of thing for the past few years now. Chronicles of the Sword, unfortunately, isn't as good as Tales of the Souls, even though it does have all that fighting in it. This is because the game uses this overhead map structure where it puts you as a little tiny character icon down there, and you have these other goon characters with you, and it forces you to move along these roads arbitrarily, hit the enemy, and then fight. And this whole overhead map movement, this entire gameplay mechanic it's pretty much useless. It's tedious, there's no point to it, there's no strategy, it's just move from point A to point B, doing this, nonsensical stronghold capturing crap and killing guys. And if you're good enough at the fighter, and the game is a fighter, you won't want to do any of that. You'll just want to fight people, and you won't have to do any of that. You'll just plow right through them. And that's pretty much why it's not very good. Now, even though the single-player game is a little hit and miss, it's still incredibly challenging. The AI has been bumped up considerably, and the new computer opponents will take every advantage they can get over you. They'll block all the time, they'll counter all the time, they'll escape throws, they'll air combo you, and they'll play off of every single one of your weaknesses, almost like they adapt. It's a little scary, actually. Some of them are so difficult that you might get frustrated, especially if you're new to the series and you find yourself still mashing buttons without any direction. So we've talked about the changes and the additions. We talked about Chronicles of the Sword, Tales of the Souls. We've talked about the new AI, the same fighting system, blah. The major thing that you're going to focus on is the character creation. That's at least what Namco wants you to focus on. Character creation, unlike some games such as Fight Night, don't actually allow you to modify your player via a number of sliders to create a totally dynamic fighter. You actually use a lot of snap-on parts that you can then augment by changing their colors or adding other layered snap-ons on top of them. For instance, I could snap on a t-shirt, change its color, snap on a different kind of shirt that slightly reveals the t-shirt, and then put armor that slightly reveals both of those on top of it, and eventually create a character that's totally unique by customizing all of these different parts in different areas: legs, feet, hands, eyes, whatever. Now here's the crazy part. You think you'd be able to take this character into every single mode and go nuts. Remember, there's no online, so first of all, you can't really share him with the world and be happy about your guy, Fish Raper, or whatever the hell you want to call him. But more than that, you also can't take him into Tales of the Souls. You can create one in Chronicles of the Sword, but you can't port that one over to the other modes, or you can create one separately from Chronicles of the Sword and use him in the other modes. So it's this disjointed sort of first attempt mess that shows that they wanted to add a really cool feature, and you can respect them for it, but it needs more polish for it to be viable in the future. Because right now you're just sort of dinking around and making a freak show. Alright, so we didn't focus a lot on the positive aspects of the game. It's partly because I'm a negative son of a bitch. I was born that way. Mom was awful. Dad was abusive. Moreover, the positive parts of Soul Calibur are things you should already be familiar with. It's called Soul Calibur-iii. There's a 1 and a 2, and there's a Soul Blade and a Soul Edge before it. It has this whole base game that's awesome. IGN even gave the first Soul Calibur a 10. There are a lot of reasons why it's a 10. The fighting system is slick, the art design's cool, the music's great, the environments are fun, it has a ton of unlockables. There's a lot of worthwhile fighting in here that you should buy into. But with that said, we also have to focus on the new additions, which we've been doing, and why they're not so great. I'm hoping that we can prevent Soul Calibur from becoming another iterative release title. From year after year, we see marginal improvements, and the game just kind of becomes stagnant and stale. We want to see a fresh game, a more directed, structured game every time, right? So, we know the base is great, the base that made Soul Calibur a 10, the base that made Soul Blade and Soul Edge so endearing, so let's focus on that. Let's scrap Chronicles of the Sword. Let's refine the character creation. Booyah! Next gen. See you next year.